Hello, and today we're going to be discussing international business ethics in under 6 minutes. Let's begin by discussing the main concepts of international business ethics. Ethics are defined as the principles, standards, and norms of conduct that govern individual and firm behaviour. Within international business ethics, there exist two main perspectives: ethical relativism and imperialism. Ethical relativism explains that societal ethics are dependent upon the society in which they are practiced. In other words, when you are in Rome, do as the Romans do. An example of ethical relativism is IKEA and how they removed women from catalogues in Islamic nations. Comparatively, ethical imperialism is when one code of ethics from one community or society is imposed upon another. So in other words, it is the belief that oneself possesses the correct ethics and that these must be imposed upon others. More recent examples of ethical imperialism is with the Western societies attempting to impose LGBT laws in Qatar's World Cup. Another example could be the West believing that Chinese state intervention is wrong, such as with Donald Trump trying to block Chinese state-owned companies in the US. But who's to say that the US's code of conduct or the West's code of conducts and ethics are more ethical than those in China or in Qatar? And that's essentially the two main concepts of IB ethics. Next, we're going to be discussing the importance of national context upon international business. The importance of national context upon international business ethics cannot be understated. Different regions have different ethics, and each of which are influenced by informal institutions. Institutions are essentially the rules of the game for operating within a country. Formal institutions are written codes of conduct like laws or regulations, whereas informal institutions, which are those which impact ethics, could be the cultures, the societal expectations, the behavioural norms, religious beliefs, or any other socially enforced rules. National context is also important because ethics may differ in ethicality or legality dependent upon location. So here you can see the example of the wine gift being customary in Romania, frowned upon as bribery in the US, and illegal in Iran. And it just goes to show the importance of national context, particularly in international business ethics. Moving forward to corruption. The largest practical issue concerning international business ethics is corruption. Corruption is the abuse of power for private benefit. In most nations, corruption is illegal, but despite this, it is often a cost of business, particularly in those developing countries. For example, in Mexico, corruption is illegal, but most businesses incur and partake in corruption in some forms as a standard business operating cost, whether it is bribing the police for protection or bribing bureaucrats for favourable contracts. Corruption, as I mentioned, is also highly associated with poverty and is thus more prevalent in underdeveloped nations. Now we're going to be discussing multinational enterprises and how these may be implicated by international business ethics. Multinationals, firstly, must navigate through ethical dilemmas incurred whilst operating worldwide. For example, IKEA having to balance Western and Islamic ethical ideologies whilst designing their catalogues. Additionally, multinationals must find a way to manage corruption within these different national ethical contexts. For example, US petroleum firms may have to partake in corruption whilst operating in Mexico, but corruption in the US is highly frowned upon, and in Mexico it is just a standard cost of doing business. For a multinational, they have to find a way to balance and manage corruption in order to appease both the domestic market that they originated from and operate within that new market, the host market. And lastly, some multinationals have introduced codes of conduct for employees, suppliers, and anybody else involved with the business. For example, The Economist, which is a newspaper, allows journalists to exchange gifts that may be consumed within one day. For example, one bottle of wine is fine, but one case would be considered bribery or unethical, and this is common practice for most multinationals. So, in summary, there exist two main perspectives on international business ethics: relativism and imperialism. Ethics are constructed via informal institutions. Each nation may have differing ethics as per their differing informal institutions, if you can refer back to the wine example, which I mentioned previously. And lastly, corruption. The most common ethical issue is illegal in most nations, but is particularly prevalent in regions with high level of poverty, meaning multinational enterprises must balance operating corruptly within the underdeveloped nations with the anti-corruption expectations of their wealthier markets. That's all for today. Next time we'll be checking out entry modes, so I look forward to seeing you then.